Sorry, one last one. Do we have interpretation for this?
Okay.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our session today. Our panel is entitled Generating Tailored Evidence for Tobacco Control, Sharing of Experiences. Good afternoon, and as we say in Kenya in Kiswahili, habari, and the answer to that is mzuri. I hope you're all fine. My name is Rachel Kitonyo Divotsu, and I work with Development Gateway as a Senior Tobacco Control Advisor, and I'm the moderator for your session today. One of the issues that I have had all the time in the 18 years I've been involved in tobacco control advocacy is that we do not have enough research or evidence to support our advocacy and our efforts to adopt and implement tobacco control legislation on the continent. And so our panel today is going to be addressing this. And our objectives for today's session is to share country-specific evidence contributing to tobacco control, to improve access to and utilization of local evidence for tobacco control, to identify mechanisms to enhance regular implementation of national tobacco control prevalence surveys, for example, the Global Adult Tobacco Survey or the Global Youth Tobacco Survey, and then lastly, to promote demand-driven evidence. And so we'll jump right into our panel. We have 5 speakers today coming from different parts of Africa. And we will go first with the 5 presentations, and then we will have a session for question and answer at the end. A reminder that you are required to send in your questions through the conference app. So if you haven't logged into that yet, please do. And we'll answer the questions at the end. So our first speaker is going to be Professor Conne van Walbeek. He'll be talking about the need to balance research, balancing the need for research versus demand-driven research. And Professor Conne is a professor in economics at the University of Cape Town and a director of the research unit in the economics of excisable products. He has more than 20 years experience as in the field of economics of tobacco control, and he has authored or co-authored more than 40 papers on various aspects, including the demand for tobacco, industry price responses, changes in smoking prevalence, the size of the illicit market, and modeling the public health and fiscal impact of tobacco tax changes. He was the founder of the Economics of Tobacco Control project in 2011, which then developed into REAP in 2019. Since 2011, he has been the principal investigator on more than 10 grants, including those funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the African Capacity Building Foundation, IDRC, and Cancer Research UK. Professor Conne, I welcome you. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Rachel. I hope you can hear me. And I would like to share my screen with you. Sorry, we are just trying to get this thing right. So I hope that you are seeing what I'm seeing. Well, I'm seeing it, that you are seeing that as well. So delegates, good afternoon to you all, and thank you very much for joining the session. So I'll be the first speaker. And before we start, I think just to lighten things up and see if the technology works, I've asked Michelle, one of the organizers, to run with 3 different polls. 2 of them I think we would regard as understanding of what tobacco control is about, and the 3rd one is specifically focusing on issues that are specific to your country, where there is no right or wrong answer. So Michelle, if you'd like to put on the first poll question, that would be great, and let's see if we can get this technology to work. Over to you. Michelle? Rachel, I'm not seeing anything happening, so do you want me to continue?
Hi, Corne, we can see your presentation, so you're welcome to just continue moving through it.
Okay, you're not doing the poll right now, Michelle?
Oh, sorry about that, Corne. There seems to be a bit of a technical issue. Would we at all be able to go back to the poll?
Possibly towards the end. I mean, if you can fix it in the next few minutes,
Perfect.
then I'd like to then continue. Okay,
100%.
so
thank you.
Let's get
Sorry,
a bit
Corne,
of...
before you continue, Michelle, could we enable interpretation?
Hi, Rachel, there is an interpreter. If you look at the bottom of the screen, you should be able to move over to French or English.
Hello, I'm the interpreter here. There is no interpretation settings on my screen here. So,
Okay, apologies. There's a few technical glitches on here. Corne, do we want to continue while we quickly resolve this issue, or do we want to take a quick break?
My proposal is that we continue.
Yeah, let's continue.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, because time is not on our side. So if I can just give a bit of context, since 2005, the FCTC has been very much the guidance when it comes to tobacco control in many countries. So for those of you who know the FCTC, and I'm sure that's pretty much everybody, this is a treaty that has been developed between 2000 and 2003 when it was adopted and voted on by the World Health Assembly. It became effective in 2005 when 40 countries had ratified it. And the FCTC is very much an evidence-based treaty. In other words, it's not just pie in the sky stuff. All the things that they are proposing, there is evidence for it. At the same time, in the negotiations, only a certain basic agreement was made, and that was that it was the absolute minimum that all countries that were part of the negotiations could agree on. So as such, it is a framework convention. It needs to be fleshed out. It's also a flaw. And specifically, when we think about the framework aspect of the FCTC, the specifics have to be elaborated upon in the so-called guidelines. And every 2 years, different parties to the FCTC meet. They negotiate and discuss different guidelines, which again are also strongly evidence-based. And what we then find is that certain guidelines get approved, and this then becomes, to some extent, the basis on which national legislation can be based, which is then subsequently also then based on the evidence which is supporting this. Of course, because the Framework Convention is a flaw, countries can go further than the letter of the agreement. For instance, the FCTC does not explicitly talk about plain packaging. It certainly does not talk about warning labels on individual cigarettes. These are developments that have subsequently appeared. They are not against the FCTC, but they are not explicitly covered by the FCTC. So countries, of course, are welcome to adopt more stringent aspects related to tobacco control in their policy making. So as an economist, I guess I've got a strong bias, so I will just put that up front. And the question is, what do we know in terms of the evidence that is out there? And we know that of the various articles of the FCTC, Article 6 up until 14, they are all focused on reducing the demand. Article 6 focusing on tobacco taxation, we've got a lot of evidence to suggest that increasing the excise tax on tobacco is the most effective, the most cost-effective, and the most sustainable intervention that we can possibly have. Effective in the sense that it does what it's meant to do. Cost-effective means that it actually brings in money as opposed to costing money. All other interventions tend to cost money, but an increase in the excise tax in nearly all instances would result in more tax revenue to government. It's sustainable in that even though you can have an implementation of a particular other project, that is not true of tobacco tax increases. You can always increase a tobacco increase more and more if there is a tax structure in place. So even if the tax is $10 a pack, you can increase it to $11, to $12, etc. What we also know is that simpler tax systems are better than more complicated tax systems. So unfortunately, Africa has not got a particularly good record when it comes to tobacco taxation. Firstly, the percentage of the retail price that comprises excise taxes is relatively low in Africa compared to other regions. And secondly, in many African countries, the excise tax structure is not appropriate. So that is something that needs a lot of attention. So in terms of specific research, what do we want? And our experience has been that policymakers want specific research that is specific to their countries. For instance, I'm giving you some examples over here. What is the cost of tobacco to my country? How many people suffer and die from tobacco-related diseases in my country? What is the price elasticity of demand for tobacco in my country? Emphasis is on my country. And we see that policymakers always want this. However, we must be careful that perfection is not the enemy of the good. We have got some findings that we have seen internationally that apply to pretty much all countries in which these studies have been done. And there's relatively little reason to suspect that in your specific country, that principle is not going to apply. The law of demand, for instance, applies to all countries. If the price goes up, people are going to consume less. We don't need to have hundreds of studies more to prove that within a specific country-specific context. It is a generic type of thing. So from that perspective, we don't necessarily need more country-specific information. We just need to apply. I want to get to the next slide, but it seems as though I've got something frozen over here. I apologize. Okay, here we go. So how should we go forward? I think some research is of particular interest to the advocacy community. For instance, political mapping. Who's who in the zoo? Who does what within a particular tobacco control context? What are the impediments to better tobacco control policies? What is the role of the tobacco industry in hindering the implementation of strong tobacco control policies? These are, to some extent, the softer aspects related to research that will greatly inform policy making on how to implement the best possible tobacco control strategy. And then the last question is, what are the most effective tobacco control tools for my country? Do we have the basis or the basic tobacco control legislation in place? Things like clean air, indoor air policies, etc. In terms of tobacco taxation, do we have the basic correct structure in place, or do we have a structure that is typically regarded as not ideal within the, that particular context? Again, I'm battling to move my slides along. I apologize. Oops.
Connie, 1 more minute, please.
Yes. I'm trying to move my slides. Okay, so the way forward. Research should be focused on the most effective tobacco control interventions. I think often we spend too much time talking about tobacco control interventions that have not been proven to be effective. For instance, if we were to spend a lot of time and effort on youth prevention approaches, in most studies, it's been shown that youth prevention approaches have not been particularly effective. We also need to recognize that much of the technical work has been done. And in some specific countries, there may be specific technical needs. However, the most important thing in tobacco control policy right now is focusing on implementation and how to get that implementation done as effectively as possible. With that, I'd like to give it back to you. Thank you very much, Rachel.
Thank you.
Ray, would you like to do the polls? They are available on the WOVA app if everyone is able to go there. You'll
Okay,
also be able to see the
let's
results.
do that if that's okay with you, and if it's okay with Rachel. So my proposal is that we go to the apps and see if we can make it work.
So log into your app at our session and click on session polls and answer all of the questions. And we can be doing that as we move to the next speaker. And at the end, the admin will tell us how we have done with the polling. So our next speaker is Dr. Chukwuka Onyekwena. He'll be talking about generating tobacco control knowledge and using it for policy. Dr. Chukwuka is the Executive Director of the Center for the Study of the Economies of Africa, and he's also the Chair of the Advisory Board of Africa Portal, a member of the Steering Committee of the Southern Voice, and a member of the African Policy Circle. His research interests include foreign direct investment, trade, global economic governance, education quality, energy, and financial inclusion. He holds a PhD in economics from University of Portsmouth, UK, and also qualifications from Harvard Kennedy School of Government and MIT, respectively. Thank you very much, Dr. Chukwuka. The floor is yours. Sorry, Dr. Chukwuka, you're on mute. Please unmute yourself.
Oh, okay, sorry. Introduction. It's always a pleasure to contribute to this very relevant topic on tobacco control. As was introduced, my name is Chukwuka Onyekwena, Executive Director of CC, and I will just share my screen to present. Is everybody seeing my screen there? Can you all see my screen?
No, we're not able to. If you're able to share your screen. So share screen.
Yeah. Can you see it now?
Yes, great. So you may start the slideshow. Thank you.
Can you see it now?
Correct, positive. Thank you so much.
Right. So the title of my presentation is Generating Tobacco Control Evidence and Using It for Policy. And I'll be concentrating on the Nigerian experience, as that is where our research has primarily been focused on. Trying to move my screen. Oops. For some reason, my screen is not moving.
Hi, Doctor. Can you see a next button or an arrow on your actual presentation?
I don't think I can.
After you share, the arrow will be on the left bottom of your
So
slide.
I battled myself, so possibly it might make sense
Okay,
Michelle to do it.
if you would prefer, I'm happy to share the presentation for you.
Or should I email it to you or something? Oh, I should be able to share this. Is it better now? Slideshow from beginning.
Okay, I think for us to not spend too much time on this, I'm happy to share the screen if you feel more comfortable. There you go. We can see it well. Okay.
I can see where now.
Perfect. It's great. Thank you so much.
All right. So this is the outline of my presentation. I'll try to hurry up now. It's the introduction, touching on tobacco use and tobacco control in Nigeria. And then I have two stories of evidence to policy. One is on taxation and one is measuring the economic and health cost of tobacco smoking in Nigeria. So in Nigeria, Nigeria is actually a leading tobacco production hub with a total of 18.4 billion sticks of cigarettes sold as of 2015. And we consider Nigeria as having low smoking prevalence at 5.6%. However, it has been growing as an average of 4% per year, according to the Global Adult Tobacco Survey. So the dismal consequence of the growing tobacco prevalence, on health, mortality, as well as economic and social well-being, has been particularly worrying. As of 2015, Nigeria recorded about 70,500 deaths out of tobacco smoking and about 250,000 cancer diagnoses related to tobacco smoking. So despite these growing concerns about the rising prevalence of tobacco use in Nigeria and the gruesome health consequences, we consider the tobacco control efforts in Nigeria as, they're still weak actually, and getting governments to implement effective tobacco control policies remain a difficult challenge. So the organization which I work in, Center for the Study of the Economies of Africa, as a leading research center in Nigeria, has been playing a major role in advancing evidence-based tobacco control efforts in Nigeria. And the key areas of work include tobacco taxation and also measuring the economic and health costs of tobacco smoking. And recently, we moved into images on tobacco prospects towards images on tobacco packages. So those are the key areas of work. So within those areas, I'll focus on the two areas, taxation and cost of tobacco, and mentioning two areas where we have experienced evidence, producing evidence and using it for policy action. So one is on taxation. So with a growing need to reduce tobacco consumption in Nigeria, there was an alliance, it's called the Tobacco Control Alliance, NTCA. It consists of both CSOs, community-based organizations, faith-based organizations, and key professionals. And it's essentially a multi-stakeholder approach towards campaigning to increase excise taxes in Nigeria. And this was as of 2017. So the Alliance, in need of evidence, the Alliance had to reach out to research organizations like CC, and also the Economics of Tobacco Control project in University of Cape Town, associated with CONE. And we conducted studies on tobacco tax simulations collaboratively, and as a group, we are able to provide a much needed evidence to inform the advocacy efforts towards the aim of increasing excise taxes in Nigeria. The workshop, which we formed a technical working group on tobacco control, became a critical platform to push for this increase in excise taxes. So we had a critical workshop in 2017 where we deliberated on increasing excise taxes. So the workshop gathered both policymakers from tobacco taxation experts from key ministries of health, finance, budget and planning, as well as the tax body of Nigeria called the Federal Inland Revenue Service, as well as regional bodies like ECOWAS, key CSOs, and then key research institutions. So we were deliberating on an appropriate excise tax that will, on one hand, reduce tobacco taxation and also increase government revenue, which we call the win-win situation, using the tobacco tax simulation, a particular model called the TETSIM from the University of Cape Town. So using that, at the end of the workshop, we were able to develop a communique which was presented to the government, recommending an increased tax rate that the government should consider.
Sorry, Chuka, you've got 1 minute more.
Oh, well. So 4 months after the workshop, the Nigerian government announced a new tax policy for tobacco products and alcohol beverages. It introduced a 58 naira, which is like 19 cents specific tax on a pack of cigarettes, which will be implemented over 3 years, 20 naira for 2018, 20 naira for 2019, and 18 naira in 2020. So although these increments put the excise tax burden at 16.4%, which is still way below the WHO recommended excise tax burden of 70%, these approach, of having a multi-stakeholder deliberation using evidence signifies a major milestone in the campaign against tobacco use, and it was a notable success in that regard. The next story is about the economic and health costs. Based on a study funded by IDRC, it revealed that Nigeria health system spends about $30 billion, which is 526 billion naira, in treating smoking-related illnesses. And there were 29,000 deaths in tobacco-related diseases, and the burden also corresponds to 231,000 457 disability-adjusted life years. So we found out that if the price of tobacco was raised by 50%, we were able to avert 23,000 deaths and 602,325 daily adjusted life years within 10 years. So it was a critical study where we collected data from different cancer registers in Nigeria, and we were able to compute the national cost of tobacco smoking. But our approach towards policy was regional. So given regional disparities in smoking prevalence within Nigeria, our dissemination strategy was on creating awareness across the regions. And given this regional approach, we were able to increase momentum among stakeholders at a subnational level, advocating for increased efforts towards tobacco control. So as we expanded this dissemination and enhancing coordination between the national and regional bodies, we were able to develop and grow a community of tobacco control actors at the regional level. So these are just some pictures of the dissemination events across different states in Nigeria, trying to create awareness on the economic and health costs of smoking. So in conclusion, despite the available evidence for the cost of smoking in Nigeria and the key role of taxation in reducing consumption, there is need for effective dissemination and engagement strategies to increase policy impact. CC has adopted what I call an issue-based approach, where we adapt the content or evidence to specific dissemination and engagement strategy. So it is critical, last words, it is critical to put equal efforts on the policy engagement aspects of tobacco control, as generating robust evidence is still not sufficient. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Chuka. Our next speaker is going to be Pape Yona Mane from Senegal. He is representing Professor Abdoulaye Diagne. Go ahead, Pape, please. So reminder, we have got interpretation. Click at the bottom of your screen. Thank you very much, Pape. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Rachel and all those participants. I'm Pape Yona Mane, and I'm going to present the experience of Consortium pour la recherche économique et sociale for generating evidence into tobacco control. As I said in the beginning, my English is not very fluent, so if it's possible for me, let me share my screen.
Go ahead and share your screen, and you can present in French. We have got interpretation.
Yes, okay. I have one version, but it's not, let me, so. I tried to to change the version of presentation. It's not the good version.
Do you mind just going ahead with what you have so that we save on time?
Okay, it's just the test, huh?
Okay, if you could make it slide presentation.
Yes.
Thank you.
Is it good? I can start?
Yes, go ahead.
Ok. So, je disais que je suis Pape Yona Mane, donc je représente le Consortium pour la recherche économique et sociale et ses expériences dans la production des évidences pour la lutte contre le tabac. Alors, le CRES a réalisé globalement 4 grands projets dans la lutte contre le tabac. Un projet appelé ASTA, un autre projet de recherche-action sur la fiscalité du tabac et un 3e projet sur la taxation effective. Et actuellement est en train de finir un autre projet pour aider à l'implémentation de la nouvelle directive de tabac. Alors, le projet ASTA est un projet qui a consisté à mettre les premiers pas du CRES dans la lutte contre le tabac. Il s'agissait de faire une cartographie politique des différents acteurs qui interviennent dans la lutte contre le tabac, d'organiser tout un ensemble de rencontres avec les autorités pour essayer de rendre formel dans un cadre législatif une interdiction de fumer dans une ville du Sénégal. Donc, cette interdiction de fumer, c'était dans une ville qui s'appelle Touba, une ville religieuse où le guide religieux avait interdit que le tabac soit consommé, mais il n'y avait pas un support législatif qui soit cohérent. Alors, le deuxième projet, à partir de ce premier projet, le CRES s'est rendu compte qu'il y avait une certaine insuffisance dans la mesure où la recherche n'était pas impliquée dans la lutte contre le tabac en Afrique de l'Ouest particulièrement. Seules les ONG luttaient contre le tabac. Alors, ils ont mis en place un deuxième projet de recherche-action composé de 3 phases. Dans une première phase, ça consistait à faire un état des lieux de l'ensemble de la lutte contre le tabac, surtout en termes de recherche dans chacun des 15 pays de la CEDEAO, et dans une deuxième phase, d'utiliser ces résultats pour essayer d'avoir une situation de lutte contre le tabac qui soit meilleure. Dans la troisième phase, d'essayer d'utiliser ces évidences et toutes ces démarches pour essayer d'influencer les politiques fiscales dans l'UEMOA et la CEDEAO, ECOWAS. Donc, la méthodologie qui avait été utilisée, c'est d'établir un profil pays dans chacun des 15 pays. Ces profils pays étaient faits à partir des équipes qui sont composées d'un chercheur universitaire, d'un représentant de l'administration fiscale, d'un représentant de l'administration douanière et des instituts de recherche, surtout statistiques. Alors, un canevas d'élaboration ou d'établissement de ces profils pays avait été proposé, donc une méthodologie très claire. Et toujours dans cette méthodologie, nous avons associé les autorités, surtout communautaires de la CEDEAO et de l'UEMOA, les preneurs de décision dès le début du processus. Et la diffusion des résultats ainsi que les aspects méthodologiques ont été faits à travers l'organisation de plusieurs ateliers et conférences, notamment régionales, à travers une approche multidisciplinaire et participative. Rachel?
3 minutes qui reste, s'il vous plaît.
D'accord. C'est un test, non?
Oui.
Oui, j'ai dit que parce que la présentation que j'étais en train de traduire, c'est pas fini. Les slides s'arrêtent là. Je voulais faire une version anglaise.
That is okay, but 1 more minute.
OK, voilà. Donc, dans la version qui va suivre, je vais mettre le projet de recherche que nous avons poursuivi entre 2014 et 2018. Et dans la suite, ce sera le projet qu'on est en train de dérouler actuellement pour aider à l'implémentation de la directive de la CEDEAO. Voilà, c'est ce que j'aurai à présenter globalement. Je ne sais pas si le temps est assez bon. Je peux m'arrêter là?
Oui, si tu peux conclure, s'il vous plaît.
Il faut conclure, voilà. Alors, ça, c'était l'économie de tout ce que j'avais à vous présenter sur les expériences du consortium pour la recherche économique et sociale en matière de production d'évidence pour la lutte contre le tabac. Nous vous remercions grandement de votre attention. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Pape. Our next speaker is going to be Professor Bontle from Botswana, and she'll be talking about innovations in tobacco control research. Professor Bontle, if you could have the floor, please.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me just share my screen. Okay. And here I am. Thank you very much, Chair. And I will try my best to keep on to time. Thank you for this opportunity to share on innovations in tobacco control research. Without sounding like a broken record, I think it's always important to remind ourselves that tobacco is a global epidemic that causes harm to human health, not only harm to human health, but economies, and including even human rights issues. And that the tobacco industry is the vector that promotes this deadly product through powerful marketing campaigns that target our African countries. And we need to remind ourselves what tobacco control is before and how it links with research. That tobacco control aims to reduce the use of tobacco and the serious health risks and mortality it causes through evidence-based policies. And as Kone said, the FCTC is an evidence-based international treaty. And so we can learn from that it just doesn't come on its own. So we need to, again, understand what evidence-based policies are all about. They are they have evidence-based policies has two goals. One is what we already know from the program evaluation to make policy decisions, and two, to build more knowledge to better inform future decisions. And this is all about research. And we also need to understand what the requirements are all about. Coordination between stakeholders, those who implement and those who manage. Leadership, strong leadership is very, very important if we are to come up with evidence-based policies. Availability of data is key if we are to come up with evidence-based policies. And of course, we need robust information technology and other tools to be able to achieve this. So the issue is, in terms of the principles of evidence-based policy, can you prove it? That is the issue. Opinion versus fact, that is the issue. And so to do all this, it is all about building and compiling rigorous evidence about what works, including costs and benefits, monitoring program delivery, and using impact evaluation to measure program effectiveness, and of course, using rigorous evidence to improve programs, scale what works again, and redirect funding away from that which does not work. Unfortunately, we do have challenges in our African continent. And some of these challenges include the fact that few people work full-time on tobacco control. And therefore, it is difficult to raise the profile of tobacco control. And it is difficult to monitor program delivery. And because we do not have the resources in terms of human capital that is focused on tobacco control. Even research then, therefore, will be very difficult to undertake. And there's scanty relevant tobacco control research on populations in our countries. And this, of course, then limits evidence to improve our programs. It limits innovation. And we do have missed opportunities to learn lessons from the experience due to interventions that are not informed by research. And essentially, we have, because of this limited research, we copy and paste tobacco control interventions from developed nations that may lack political and socio-cultural context. Some of the other challenges that we have that we need to look at is the issue of lack of data standardizations. Why do we need to standardize data in the first place? To allow for collaborative research, large-scale analytics, and for sharing tools and methods. So these are some of the challenges that we have as a region. And we have weak communication networks. We do need to create some of these communication networks if we are to be innovative in terms of research control, in tobacco control. And of course, I did talk about inadequate human and material capacity and limited or lack of funding, which is always the issue, and competing priorities. If HIV is the issue, and we see people are dying of HIV, tobacco takes the back seat or the last seat in the room. So those are some of the challenges that we have. So what do we need to do vigorously? We need to dedicate full-time staff on tobacco control. I mean, I'm here talking about innovations in research to raise tobacco control research profile. To do so, we do need human capital. We need to raise awareness on the value of research among policymakers. It is them who come up with policies, and therefore they need to understand that those policies, for them to be effective, they have to be informed by research. And
Bontle, one moment, please.
We need to develop, thank you, we need to develop structures to support research capacity, build partnerships with our academic institutions to attract funding in tobacco control research. And of course, delivery of locally relevant research through sustainable domestic funding, introduction of tobacco levies, like in our case here in Botswana. So it's just, I end by sharing with you that Botswana has just recently adopted, well, the law has been passed in Parliament. And one of the lessons that we learned was that the global adult tobacco survey was instrumental in defending a strong tobacco control law. The policymakers discovered that they can argue their case using research, the media, and we were also able, as civil society was also able to share the available data to convince the public to rally behind the strong tobacco control law. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Bontle. Our last speaker is going to be Mr. Zelalem Abate from Ethiopia. Zelalem, you have the floor. Michelle, if you could play his video, please.
Hello, my name is Zelalem Mengistu. I'm a program manager at Matheus Wondu Cancer Society. We are very grateful for the organizer of the first African conference on tobacco control and development and their collaborating partner. So my talking point today is generating tailored evidence for tobacco control, Ethiopian experience sharing. So my outline of this presentation is key bottom lines for tobacco control evidence here in Ethiopia and the existing available evidences for tobacco. And also I will give you highlight on the major TC progress made by the country. And finally, our conclusion and recommendation. So the key bottom line is tobacco is the single biggest cause of preventable deaths, and the impact of this risk factor is very high for low-income countries like Ethiopia in terms of disease burden and mortality, as this is a global pandemic. And our country, Ethiopia, is the second populous country, and the prevalence of tobacco seems very low. However, in terms of absolute number, the burden is very high for the health system, and its direct and indirect cost is also very high. And we have, the country is in, like in most developing countries, in epidemiologic transition. We have already highly burdened with communicable diseases and also maternal, nutritional, and child health problems. But all these situations are now being overridden by growing NCDs, non-communicable diseases such as cardiovascular, cancer, and also their risk factor, such as tobacco. So the country had some available evidences for the magnitude and scale of this problem. For the tobacco control, the country conducted a study in 2016, the GATS study. This is our recent study conducted by WHO. It's a household level study conducted for age 15 plus population. And also we have a step survey conducted again in 2015. And we have also a Lancet Poverty Commission studies. This is based on the WHO 5x5 model. It's include the major NCD conditions such as cardiovascular cancer, DM on one side, and also major risk factor on the other side, including tobacco, and also the SCDGs and universal health coverage issues. And also, we have studies revealing the countries in a epidemiologic transition and being aggravated by tobacco. And we have also conducted a policy mapping and also formulated a policy briefs, which are very vital for our advocacy efforts based on these evidences. And the industry, the tobacco, particularly the tobacco industries, are also stating a figure and evidence based on their own past studies. And our partner, to counter this effort, they conducted studies showing the status of illicit trade in the country using studies like INPTPAC survey. And we have also global and regional findings and projection from our partners, such as WHO, World Bank, Group and Development Gateway. These are vital for our tobacco control program evaluation and implementation, and our illicit, our tax reform, and also illicit trade issues. So currently the country made some significant progress in terms of tobacco control policy change and also subsequent implementation. We have promulgated a stringent tobacco control policy, which have very key provisions such as 70% pictorial warning, 100% smoke-free environment, 100% total advertising promotion, prohibit sale by to minor, prohibit single skill sale, and also strong enforcement and compliance. So all these key provisions are contained in this proclamation are because of the available evidences for advocacy and the program implementation. We have also made a tax policy reform and set the current retail price at 54%, and we expect this will reduce the tobacco smoking rate among adults by 10% and also bring an additional revenue around 20.7 million SD. And based on this change, we have also been formulating an implementation regulation and directive for at national and also for regional governments. And the country broader policy documents such as national health policy documents such as health sector transformation plan 2 and NCD strategic plan also consider the existing evidences to state their intervention. So finally, my conclusion, we still require very tailored and fresh evidence around illicit trade because the industry continuously made an argument using false figures. And also we need a GYTS, Global Youth Tobacco Survey. It's conducted for age between 13 to 15 for at school level, and we require these studies. And also we need an update on the current GATT survey, and we require also more NCD risk factor surveys. And the current proclamation also needs an impact evaluation and from Empower perspective. And also we need an assessment on the impact of the current tobacco tax reform in the country. And studies are also required on the economic, social, and behavioral cost of and situation of tobacco in the country. So finally, thank you. And I'm very grateful for your attention. And I'm very happy to hear your feedback, comments, and questions.
Thank you very much, Zelalem. I would like to hand over to Professor Kone to quickly take us through the results of the poll and then we shall make concluding remarks.
So thank you very much. Michelle, there we go. So the question for this particular result was, what are the most effective measures that countries can take to reduce tobacco use? And I'm, as an economist, very happy to see that 65% of respondents indicated that it would be rapid increases in tobacco excise tax. The second most popular one was bans on tobacco advertising, promotion, and sponsorship. The third one was 100% smoke-free places, and the last one was plain or standardized packaging with pictorial health warnings. So the next one, please, Michelle. So the question over here was, which of the following three stakeholders have got the most impact on affecting change in tobacco control policy? And politicians and government officials, as well as civil society organizations, it looks very similar. I think one can call this a photo finish between the two. Research organizations have not done very well, but I don't think that that's their role. But I think the interaction between politicians and civil society is very, very crucial in getting and affecting change. Next one, please. And the following one was just testing of knowledge. And I'm afraid to say that the knowledge is a little bit all over the place. The question was, how many countries are currently parties to the Framework Convention on Tobacco Control? The answer is 181. And I see that 41% of respondents got that right. A number have thought that it was less, and another number thought that it was more. But these are the results. So if you're interested, the correct answer is 181. So with that, I'm giving it back to Rachel. Thanks very much, Michelle, for putting this up.
Unfortunately, we don't have time for questions, so I will just close our panel. Thank you to our panelists for sharing your experiences from Botswana, from Senegal and West Africa, from Ethiopia. And as we leave, let us think about what we can do to improve the quality and amount of research that we do on the continent. And taking note of the last slide where we thought that research institutions had no role, that maybe we need to reach out a bit more to people like Chuka and Pape, and even Bontley and Kone, and see how we can rope in the research community. Have a very good afternoon, and looking forward to the next session. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, bye.
Have a great day.
Bye.